They take it forever. There it goes. Bam.
This is Scott Huesing, and you're watching the Break It Down Show.
This is fun for us. I mean, we don't get to do this nearly as often as we used to, but thank you for, I don't know, however many times, 30 times, 50 times you've been on the show with me. Yeah, man, that's a lot.
It is a long overdue, my friend.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I was writing up your little thing, as we start the episode. I was pounding in some keys, and I just sort of let the spirit move me with these things. And I mentioned the Ride for the Brave because that's always going to be a defining thing for us. But then all these little clips started playing in my head, and then. It was so much fun. When I talk about that clip playing in my head, what comes to your mind as like this, the other memories beyond the ride, which is notable, and we'll talk about, but what are the small things?
Yeah, what did you call this show? It had a theme when we set this on the calendar. What was that word you used? I don't know. It was a recap or something, but a reconnection. Well, we talk all the time, but we always
sure.
You got this, great platform, and we always kind of take it for granted. It's like, it's you got instant access to it, and the ride was 4 years of shared misery, like as veterans or soldiers, like that bonds us. When we're on active duty, is like the worst times are the best and most memorable. But you and me over the last 8+ years have had. I mean, there's so many. I don't think there's one really that stands out. I do. Sure. I tell the story a lot about our first podcast when we met through Mark Valley. And how that kind of evolved when I was up at the Writers Guild, and it was just this random connection where we all hung out and dropped a podcast in my studio and just had a little bromance between all three of us. And then I don't know, dozens and dozens of shows later, and sharing connections and networks. I think you look at almost a decade of friendship, close friendship, not phone calls like, "Hey, Pete, I need something." Or, "Hey, Scott, I need something." We've gotten people's stories out there and made introductions and connections that I think if we had to do a research project right now and look back at the success of those, it'd probably be a little bit mind-blowing.
Yeah. I mean, we've grown in a lot of ways. I'd hate to just say like things that I've learned from Scott, because there's too many, right? Like I just have grown tremendously, and boy, I'm a lot more mentally stable now than I was before. I was in a lot more peril before, but I was able to get over the hump in a lot of ways, and a lot of that is because I was able to figure things out. One of the first things that we did after we met was I picked you up at the airport. And you were blown away because I thanked you. But in that moment in time, being able to be worth something to somebody was literally life-saving. Like I had to find a way to be valuable to somebody, to something more often, because all of my professional capability had been denied me when I came back, And so to be able to do something for someone I considered, at least a new friend, a potential friend, long-term friend. Yeah, that meant a lot.
I'd forgotten about that. It resonates with me now too. I thought after the fact, like, why is this guy thanking me for picking me up from the airport? And it really is, when you have to move your house or you need a ride from the airport or to the airport, like that's a very intimate thing to ask of someone. And then when they actually show up and do it, I think it brings them into your tribe. Like, these are people that don't just say they're going to do something; they actually do it. They show up, and you've been one of those guys. As one of my best friends over the last 8 years. So that's a great story. Notwithstanding the airport pickups where you've gotten out of your truck in a Speedo or some other ridiculous outfit or with your shirt off, like those are maybe not for public dissemination in the forum, but. Still,
I don't think you were even there the last time I picked up. Wait, no, you were there because why did I pick up Rudy Reyes at the airport? But that's my uniform. Is I put that Speedo on and I grab him and so. And Rudy doesn't really know me, like
Yeah.
He's seen me a number of times, but like I flash into his life for a couple of seconds every couple of years. And so when he gets picked up from the airport, why wouldn't I show up again in a speedo and get out there and render a salute and open the door?
And there's another guy too who I've been friends with, and well, is his career is just continually evolved and has grown with his most recent success on Special Forces on Fox in his third or fourth season now. I can't keep up, and you talk about mental health and stability. It's like he's reconnected with his family, and he's like, as you age, you become a little more grounded. It's like if there's something that people get out of storytellers or podcasts or whatever, is like there's a lot of second and third order effects, I think, that we don't take into account just doing what we do, and we do it for the right reasons, I think. So that was one that just is really relevant.
You've brought a lot of guests on the show. You got Frank Shamrock, MMA Hall of Famer from the UFC. Also, Tito Ortiz, MMA Hall of Famer from the UFC. But when we did the Frank Shamrock show, it was like the last public thing that at least I got to do for quite a while before we completely shut down from COVID. We went from the Valley to Orange County in like 30 minutes. Do you remember that? How crazy it was?
Well, I remember too, Frank was a little leery too of doing an in-person show. So it was really before the outset of the great connectivity on Zoom or StreamYard or whatever the platform is now. But he's like, yeah, we'll do it. And he wasn't too concerned. But yeah, the drive up and the drive back was I-5 was like a ghost town. It was frightening. It was apocalyptic to drive around thinking we were the only survivors on the planet right now. And that was there's so much has changed too, since that, like COVID and post COVID, and the podcast medium alone, where it's because of technology, like everything's so much more accessible. Like a lot of shows now, they're like, we only do remote. Like that's the only way we'll do it. Because I remember I love your style of podcasting too has been so great, because I share it with a lot of people. I said, there's a lot of utility in capturing an animal in their natural habitat. Like when we were up doing every show, like, to get Greg Hurwitz in, his house, like we're just two strangers, like knock on the door, we meet, and there's a bromance again. And we're talking about writing and books and what Greg does and, the fiction world. And, and again, through that connection is like, those are relationships that I've sustained and cultivated over the years. Greg was doing a book signing for his last book here in Dallas. And I'm like, hey, where are you going to be? And we swung by, listened to him chit chat, and then, caught up a little bit, and then, moved on. But that was a seed that was planted by you, and, extended me an invitation like, hey, let's go interview Greg. So
that was a seed planted by me that you had given me the original seed, though. Big surprise. Because do you know how I got Greg Hurwitz?
No.
It was from Billy. So everybody, Billy's a really notable.
Yeah, Billy Ray. Another. And I probably used Billy's name, and we still communicate. And another brilliant screenwriter of Captain Phillips fame and Secret in Her Eyes and Comey and everything else. Is phenomenal screenwriter. But that guy taught me a lot about writing. Not that I kind of stole from the whole screenwriting medium that really transposed itself into long version writing form. And
and it's funny, like I know Billy Ray. Holy shit. How in the world did this happen? And the last time I sent him a note, wasn't that I try not to bug people too much, but I sent him a note and I'm like, hey, do you want to come? He's like, yeah, whatever you want. And I just haven't, like, he's so accessible. I haven't even bothered to do it. Shame on me for not getting more time with Billy Ray. But these are folks, when we saw Greg Hurwitz, he moved. He lives on a ranch. You'll find that interesting because you live on a ranch. But he moved out of the Hollywood Hills and has a gorgeous place. So I've done another one with Greg face to face. It was fantastic. And Yeah, the ability to sit and so there's a lady named Ruta Lee, everybody. Ruta Lee. She's an actress, longtime famous Hollywood person. She's so connected now in her 90s that she knows where the seating chart has to be, not to make for great conversations, but to keep people from fighting. Because all her celebrity friends have histories. They have multi-decades, and no, you can't sit those guys together. And does wonderful stuff. She lives in a place in a house that has a legacy. So if I told you that she lives in Orson Welles and Joan Crawford's old house mansion in Laurel Canyon, that's the kind of place that I get to go to. And Scott, I pinch myself. I'm like, oh my God, this 90-something-year-old lady that does not have to let me into her house. She's the frailest little thing. And here comes this big gorilla, and she's hilarious. She's body. She's awesome. And I'm just laying on the floor in her house, like plugging things in because her house is ancient. And so everything's different now than it is. And yeah, I'm just in her house and it's just the two of us, but for whatever reason, these people trust me enough to let me into their house.
You're a very likable guy.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah.
I don't know, like we share the connection. Have you had Johnny M. Clark on the show, the author of Guns Up?
I don't think so.
So I recently shared that story and that connection when I was in San Diego doing Jocko Willink's podcast, and he had been on the show. And I also shared with Jocko. I said, "Yeah, I get this phone call. I'm out of my tractor pushing dirt around here in Texas, and it's Johnny." And he's like, "Hey, do you know this guy Jocko Willink? He wants me to be on the podcast." I said, "Yeah, he's a good dude." I said, "You can trust him." And so, we're always sniffing each other out. And so I was telling the story about how Johnny's book was the very first book I ever read cover to cover. And it came to me in a care package when I was a young Lance Corporal in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And I read it out of sheer boredom. And then when I was published, I looked this guy up on the internet. We became pen pals. Johnny sends me a copy of his book, signed paperback, which is sitting in my bookcase back here. And then I fly out to Florida and I schedule a layover because I was promoting one of my interpreters to lieutenant in the Navy, Big Sam. And so I flew back up, or I did a layover. Johnny drives and picks me up at the airport. We go to his house in Tampa, go out on his pontoon boat and drink a few beers. He's also got some celebrities that live around his little inlet too, that are celebrity houses that are really interesting when you talk to that guy. But the point being is, as I'm finishing up and telling these stories of all these connections and what inspired me to write and continue to, be a reader, Johnny was really the first book, because even in high school, I never read a book cover to cover. I was just a horrible student, wasn't read to as a kid. I didn't develop that habit. And after we recorded like 5 hours in the studio with Jocko and Echo, he's like, "Hey, Sean Ryan wants you to be on the show." And he's like, "Yeah, I get back to him. I'd love to do Sean's show." So Jocko goes on Sean Ryan's show, and I just saw this snippet, and Sean pins Jocko to the carpet. He says, "3 people that you would recommend to be a guest on my show. Who are they?" And Johnny M. Clark was one of them. And so Johnny sends me the video. So I says, "Hey, I'm going to do an email introduction with his producer at Sean Ryan's show and you." He's like, "Oh, I'm not sure about all this fame," because, Johnny's in his 70s now. He's a Vietnam vet. He was a machine gunner. I was a machine gunner when I was enlisted. And so, it really goes back to what you've taught me too, is like everybody's gettable. And the fact that Johnny hasn't been on your show is like, definitely want to talk to that guy, because he's been, that was a seed right there in, 1990 that was planted in some random care package that shows up in the Middle East, that this young, 20-year-old Lance Corporal opens up, and I read this book, and here we are 30 some plus years later, and we're great friends. He just came out to the reunion for the 2-4 Association at my ranch here in Texas. He spent the weekend. Johnny and Nancy flew out, and we hosted them. And although he's not an official Magnificent Bastard, we made him an honorary one for that weekend. And it's nuts, man. How close people are in the world we roll in.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody's gettable, especially if they're super famous and they're doing media, and if you make it easy on them. I just did a video for this thing called Podmatch. Podmatch is a not a commercial, but it's a service where if you want to host guests or be a guest, you can get on this service, and I do video sometimes for them. A lot of us do who are producers, etc. And I just did one saying, "Hey, here's my backpack. Here's my 3 camera shoot. It all goes in here, you know, and you can really do this." And I just did it with this guy named Cody Wood, he's a name in the Western sports world. So Cody runs a thing called the Woodshed, and he's got sponsors, and he has not just all of the famous rodeo people who a lot of people who aren't in rodeo probably would never recognize, but he has all of the people who are famous around rodeo. So he just had on one of the longtime musicians in Chicago, like one of the original OG Chicago band members, because that guy loves rodeo. And so I went to see Cody and I got him all geared up and I taught him what to do. And I went and met him in Vegas and we set up cameras. We went through all the bugs, and I said, "This is still going to be a tightrope, but now you have a tightrope. Now you can choose your adventure." And right now we're in this sub lobby within the Virgin Hotel. It used to be the Hard Rock, and we're having these in their industry the most famous people possible. It's crazy, and he's thrilled, and I'm thrilled for him because he can now go lights on anywhere, and because he had that capability while he's there during Cowboy Christmas, his last few weeks in December, he didn't just grab 10. He's like, I got so many extra shows. He got like 15 or 20 shows. And man, I was so thrilled for him because I know what these adventures are going to be like for him and how it can. Now he's got a lot of it figured out. He's already got the prestige, he's already got the sponsors. And so now he's got this ability to go wherever and say, "Hey, I'm set up over there in the corner. Come on, let's go do this." And what my show has turned into, sure, a lot of people listen and all that, and there's all kinds of people that subscribe, but the financial return isn't there directly. But the indirect financial benefit, the enrichment of my life, the enrichment I can put onto other people's lives, it's immeasurable. It's so big. The
Yeah.
joy that I'm able to create with my show, it's incredible.
I think people, you've probably heard me say this too, is, it's value. What is of value to you? It's not always numbers in your bank account, although it's important. But the intangible things you get and the connections that enrich your life. I mean, again, the circle that continues to grow from everything we've done. You've been a part of the Celebrity Softball Classic as well, and you talk about rodeo this year. We're marching all these guys from the 2-4 Association out, and we enlisted 18 young poolies to join the Marine Corps and raise their hand on the field. And they were sworn in by Medal of Honor recipient Major General James Livingston, who wrote the foreword to my book. And then, in the tunnel as we're going out before the whole game is, all these. Rocker Steiner was one of these kids, my daughter who's in the equestrian, she's like, "Do you know who that is?" I'm like, "No, let's go meet him." And so she was a little gun shy, but his dad's there, and he's with Rocker Steiner, who's the 2025 world champion, and they live right here in my hometown, Weatherford, Texas, and the connections just are mind blowing of the circles that we pull in. And one guy who's been on the show, Tim Klund. Just when I think I know a couple people, TK knows everybody. Like,
Everybody.
he makes me look like a recluse on most days because he's just so connected and giving. I think that's where, not tooting anyone's horn here, but that's where people like you and TK are so different, is willingly share that network. Like, "Oh, you need to talk to this guy. I'm going to introduce you." And it's not, "Hey, let me check with Pete to see if it's okay to share TK's number." It's like, "No, you're already vetted, man. Like, if you're in this circle, like, it's cool to share that contact, and over to you guys to sort out the details for a great connection, and if there's anything there." And I think that is, I don't know if that's a lost art in this day and age where people try and shield themselves on social media platforms or, their contact info, but everything's so almost overly excessive. Or overly accessible that some people do that. We're not like that. I think that's a credit to what you do and what Tim does. And I don't have a
Yeah.
problem doing either.
Well, there's so many people that would love to know the person that I know, and because I know so many people, and our Rolodex don't even overlap all that a lot, but our worlds, we have these gigantic worlds,
Yeah.
and I can introduce you to 100 new people tomorrow,
Yeah.
and
I love sharing this story. I don't think we've talked about it publicly too, but
uh,
again, when I pivoted into working under cover of darkness as an agent, to sell books for other veterans, Andy Biggio, who wrote The Rifle and The Rifle 2, and we're working on his third book for Vietnam vets, but these World War II vets, he's got this rifle that's got hundreds of signatures, and Andy just calls me out of the blue. He says, "I would like Mel Brooks of Blazing Saddles and Hollywood fame to be the 400 signature." He goes, "Do you know how to get to him?" I says, "Nope." I said, "But I know who does." And in 2 phone calls, me calling you and you
mhm.
calling Harlan, he approaches the Brooks family and asks Mel, or just see if he would consider being the 400 signature on Andy's rifle. And unfortunately, it didn't work out because he was ailing. But that right there is emblematic of how crazy this network is. I think, like, if there was a theme for the show, is like sharing the network. I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe that's the banner, that's scrolling, sharing the network,
Yeah, sharing the network.
giving
Actually, I just
back,
wanna
or don't be
yeah.
a tight ass with what you and who you know. So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah,
It frustrates me when someone is a tight ass with those things,
yeah,
because if they say, I'll see if it's all right. That's just a form of no to me now, and I'm like, "You know what? Don't bother."
yeah,
If you're not comfortable with the connection, and I say this in a nice way, but I'll say, "You know what? Don't worry about it." I don't want it to be too much of an ask, because if I can't communicate directly, then I'm allowing somebody else to be in charge of my business, and
yeah. I think too is because people are more accessible, and whether it's business or leadership by email, or they make assumptions. I always tell people when I coach them on writing or leadership, is like, don't make work for people. For
Mhm.
example, um, and this is in the same vein of people saying no, or they say they're too busy. It's like, if I ask someone famous for to write an endorsement or something for a book that I'm working on, we're trying to sell, and they're like, if they think they're so famous, and they're like, yeah, no, oh, I don't have time to do these, endorsements, or but like, in one vein, I get it. It's like, everybody's busy, and that does take a lot of work to read a book and put your name on it and endorse it. But I also think sometimes, like, there's going to come a day where no one's going to ask you for those, and then how will you feel when the phone stops ringing? But on the other hand, when I teach people, like, don't make work for other people, I always say, why don't you create a blurb with the person's name on it, draft it, and say, "Hey, I'd love to have an endorsement like this for this
Yeah.
work or this project. We'd love you to be tied to it. If you have time to read it," and then do that months and months in advance. Not like, "Hey, my book or my movie or my film is coming out next month." Of course, they're going to say no. But
Yeah.
when you make work for other people, that's the best way to get a no right off the bat.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
people are humans and they get their feelings hurt. I don't get my feelings hurt. I'm like, I get it. I try and make it as easy for people to say yes all the way up until that last point as I possibly
Mhm.
can. So they want to say yes, because most people do in their heart. But
Yeah, I got Dan White talking to us here, so not acknowledging Dan White and Brad Hutchings, by the way, who also
what's up
checked in.
to my
Big Dan,
boys?
Big Dan. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, he said so much great stuff there. The networking thing, when people will say, "How do you make your money? Does Paul Olive advertise with you?" They don't say Paul Olive, but I'm just using a brand because it's kind of funny. Like, no, no, I don't chase sponsors. I don't chase sponsors for really what turns out to be not that much money. Like the juice and the squeeze aren't equal there. Partly because my show hasn't got that million person following. Right, my show kind of died a lot during COVID, but it got so much richer in other areas. So when I'm talking to folks about what's valuable about the show, it's these connections. It's the ability to
Yeah.
introduce you to somebody else. And sometimes, yeah, there has to be a gate there, because we know folks who are very famous, and the last thing I want is for it to be bad because the person is starstruck on the other end. And so if I put a barrier between them, it's just because, and I will intro that person at the same quality I would face to face or email to email, but I'll say, hey, you got to know Scott Huesing, but before I exchange your guys' contact, I wanted to make sure I asked you because I don't want anybody to bother, kind of thing. But then I lay it on and I talk about the character and all that kind of stuff that I like to do and introduce people. And then they inevitably, if they're inclined, they say yes. They really don't say no to that. And then I'll write up a great email where it's back and forth and it's the same thing. But yeah, but I also want to introduce people. I want to see what you and somebody else come up with, or whatever it is, or how you might help that person get over the hump in some small way.
I like
Because
I like the ones where I say, "Hey Pete, you got to have this guy on the show," and you're like, "I introduced you to him." I'm like, "Oh, that's right." I can't count the number of times that's happened. Like, or I'll say, "Hey, you know what I'm working with on this project is Hugo Schweitzer," and you're like, "Yeah, I introduced you to him." I'm like, "Oh
yeah,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, because Hugo was
yeah,
on the show, and like
yeah,
Hugo and I have done. I think we have collaborated on 3 projects together since we were introduced over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years since you tied
right.
us in. And he's a great ghostwriter, amazing voice. Sharing, helping other people share their stories, and just it's been crazy. You know,
It just has been crazy. Yeah,
and then all
yeah,
the
and we
notable,
go ahead.
famous, respectable people that he's writing stories about, now they're in my world. And like now I'm like, hey Pete, yeah, Hugo's writing a book
Hmm.
about this guy. You should have this guy on the show. And then it just keeps
Right,
growing. It's
right.
it's really cool. It's really got a cool effect.
This is for the podcast folks out there. How do I get people on a lot of times I don't book them. Scott's like, hey, have so and so on your show. Like I'm still supposed to have Mike Sager on the show, and I just haven't picked up the phone and did the damn work. Partly because I am busy. It's not that I'm going to be thrilled to talk to Mike on the show, and
Yeah.
I think we did a show a long time ago. But that guy's so goddamn interesting. And another thing that I've really mastered because of the show, and this will resonate with you because we've done a lot of this stuff, but let somebody else be great. Let somebody else be a great host. So when I show
Yeah.
up at whoever's house, and I always think about J.R. Robinson because he is a bachelor. He's got a house out in the valley. He's filled with drums. This guy's anybody watching. JR is the most recorded drummer in history. Any song that you can think of, he's probably played drums on any band or act. Like he's probably played drums on something they did. He's that famous. And I go to his house, and he's like, "Hey, I made some cookies. You want some cookies?" And so I've got this wonderful guy who's now, look, is he a friend? No, but I can email and call him anytime I want, especially if I have something interesting that I think he'd like. I've earned that right to send that to him. If it's a person, if it's a song, or just to check in with them, and I let him be a great host. How often does a bachelor get to be a good host in his home? And there's just all these things. How often does someone get a compliment? Especially as middle-aged guys. We're the most invisible people in the world. And so I'll say something that's true, like, "Oh man, you got to know my buddy Scott. He's a handsome devil. Looks a little bit like, and then I'll say something that's beneficial towards you, because I want you to know that I do appreciate you. You are a handsome devil, but your heart is so big, and so I get to say these things in front of somebody else about you in a way that rewards them. And there's some art in all of that introduction and networking work that we do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people are untrue to themselves, when they say that you don't appreciate it when people give you that type of compliment or something. It's very humbling,
Yeah,
to be a part of that. I don't know. As you get older and you get a little more experience, you just kind of, I kind of feel bad for people that don't take time to do that. I think they're
mhm,
missing out on a lot of things. Maybe
yeah,
their bucket's filled with other things that
sure,
make them happy. So I'm not judging. I'm just saying that making time. You've always been one of those people too that throughout my life, like you make time. You understand the importance of showing up.
yeah,
Um, to the point where that first year when I rode my bike across the country, after my buddy Dave killed himself, you're like, I'm going. And like, you
Yeah.
just showed up. Like, it just, like, I don't know who does that. You've heard
Yeah.
me say that, but it was still this day. It's pretty humbling, so.
Well, when we were having that conversation, we're both people that someone calls when someone commits suicide or drinks themselves to death or whatever it's going to be. We're those people, and that's an uncomfortable honor. But
Yeah.
still have to do the work. You still have
Yeah,
to
it's, I mean,
do the things.
not to put a damper on it, but I just, the phone call I was on before we started doing this show, I lost another one of my guys on Monday, and I was one of the first to find out from one of his ex-wives. And although extremely tragic, because he's a young guy, not completely unexpected in the circles we roll in on the military side, and guys who experienced all this trauma. But there was one thing that I noted in this 30-minute conversation was all the things he had gone through in his childhood. And I was like, we've talked about this 1,000 times, is like, you never know the 18 years and what's compounded in that before someone joins the military, and then they go off and then they leave the military and they either have success or failure or struggle. It's like, we've swam in these waters a lot. So it's, it's to get a text message this morning, and then hop on the phone call. It's like, here we go again. It's just, but again, the point of this is not to put a damper on, we're talking about this network, but again, even in times of tragedy or loss, and we've experienced it, you with friends and service members and your own brother, and dealing with this, is we're there for each other. We show up, and we don't just say, sorry to hear that. And that we put action behind the words. And in this case, today it'll be no different. So crazy.
Yeah. The way I remember the whole ride thing starting was you gave me the tragic news about your friend. You talked about him quite a lot, and you said, I'm just going to ride my motorcycle across the nation, because I need to deal with this thing, and then I'm going to speak at his funeral. And this is by the way in the height of COVID, everybody.
Yeah, there were no flights. It was hard to get a flight.
No. And so in my mind, I thought, oh, you're a precious little baby. Look at you with your little fresh little butt. Hey, you're not driving across the country by your fucking self on a motorcycle without someone else there with you. I'll drive with you. I love going across the country. And so I'll make sure that you go do all the hard, crazy shit you want to do. I'll make sure that there's, a net and some cold water and all these other things. And I'm not a whole lot different than who's the firefighter, country musician warrior that we know whose brother and dad killed themselves. What's that guy's name? It's we went out for his walk. He walked from Palo Alto down to LA. God dang it. You and I both know who this guy is.
He's Marine.
Anyhow, yeah. And his buddy from the fire station was his chief of staff, and that was sort of the same thing. He was there to make sure all the logistical things were taken care of. And so, and in that moment, I think you said something like, like, did we just invent something? And I was like, yeah, I guess we did, and the great guys over at Save the Brave, they jumped in and we all started working on this thing together. And it was hard. It was hard, everybody. And there was one time on the first time Scott rode there and back, and we were under an underpass on the fucking freeway in 100-something degree heat, and we were both just head down like, holy fuck, because it was harder for Scott. But even in my own truck, it was like, holy fuck, it's hot out here. Like, it's, really, really, really uncomfortable. And there we were, just, looking out for one another on this hard thing. I call it veteran Ramadan. But yeah, it was really hard, but it was what needed to be done. And so it wasn't hard to jump in on something great, even though, and a lot of what we love about the military is how hard certain things are. I would look at my gear every night before we went out, before me and Night Train or me and Johnny, whoever it was, I'd be like, that fucking gear. And it would be like, laughing at me. And I'm like, nope, it's going on, it's stinky. It's, oh my God, how body armor gets when you're actually working. Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. I'm like, yeah, I love that though. I love those memories. The individual patrols, they kind of blended in one thing, but that memory of the gear sitting on that cross, just waiting for me to grab it and just
Speaking of
taunting me.
gear in the ride, I love the surfboard strapped to the
Yeah,
back of your
yeah,
truck.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you show up like
yeah.
year 2 or 3 and there's a surfboard because Pete Turner's become someone's personal DHL to move a surfboard from California to South Carolina. And
Yeah.
yeah, we'll just throw the surfboard on here too. Because
Well, Scott Shipman knows this artisan surfboard maker on the West Coast over here by me. And he's like, I'll pay you to deliver it because it's hard to get a surfboard shipped in a good way across the country. And I'm like, yeah, I'm coming that way because he's in South Carolina. So of course I'm going to do that. And he's like, I'll rip a check to you. And I'm like, give it to the charity. I'm already going, you know? And so that, yeah, that just
yeah.
added to our pile of money. And why the fuck not? Well, here's why the fuck not. Because one, it's dumb. Two, I already got 40 boxes of shit to move every time
Yeah.
we stop.
Yeah, you were glutton for
But it
punishment
didn't
that
matter.
year.
Yeah. And it put an extra pile of money, and that was the whole point of that whole thing. And it is something memorable. But yeah, I'm already doing it. Why not? Well, it's just one more box, not a heavy box. Let's do it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. So how was that Jocko show thing? I haven't really had a chance to ask you too much about it because it was about to happen, and now it's already happened. So how was that experience?
Yeah, well, we started planning the Ready First Ramadi reunion months and months and months ago, probably earlier this year, like February or March. And, we all zoomed in. General McFarland was part of that because it's all of the units that were under the Ready First Combat Team in Ramadi, and we're doing a 20-year reunion, which is still mind-blowing for those guys that were in that battle space at that time. But a lot of the key players on that came in, and we zoomed in. There was probably 10 or 15 of us on that first call. General McFarland, Austin Manis, Ben Sledge, my partner, Jocko, me. And, we're waiting for the general to show up, and Jocko's like, hey, he's like, how come you haven't been on my show? I was like, I don't know, man. Like sometimes, again, the answer's right in front of your face. And he's like, yeah, you definitely got to do it. And like that night, I get an email from his scheduler and producer, and like we made it happen in September. And it was, most people have a perception of Jocko Willink, whether it's through his merchandise or Jocko Fuel and the podcast. And he's absolutely, I say this unabashedly, not just because we're friends and we've known each other before I did this show, a very gracious human being, and one of the most well-read guys. Even though you look at him, he's like, this guy's a caveman on TV, and he's throwing kettlebells around at 4:32 every morning on his watch. But interestingly enough, if you went back to every episode of the Jocko Willink podcast, it started off like the first 100 episodes are Jocko reading books. And then at some point he says, yeah, people are like, want me to have guests on the show. So the next 400 plus episodes now have guests, and his brand is just really taken off, and he is persistent and relentless in everything he does. And, I was actually staying with Mike Sager when I did the show. Again, I was like, I don't want to pay for a hotel in San Diego. And I was like, who do I know? I was like, God, again, the answer's right in front of my face. I'm like, I call Mike, and he says, hey, you want a house guest for a couple of days? He's like, absolutely. He goes, I'll do you one better. You can have my mom's entire house right next to me here in Point Loma, and you just stay there. I live next door. So
Yeah.
I did, and I did the show, and I showed up, and we catch up, and, just like this, we started talking about all this good stuff ahead of the show. And we're like, hey, we got to start recording, hit record. And, I think one break later, we were in the studio for like 5.5 hours. I couldn't believe it. So, but it was, again, there's probably a handful of guys that I've done interviews with on podcasts or TV or whatever, that I could count on one hand that are some of the greats, and like he's now up there. I think there might be room for maybe one more, but just it was a great experience. And his his reach, which is in the millions and multi-millions on so many different platforms, he's just doing great things for veterans, and I really respect that of him. And I'm very proud of the fact that he's successful as a veteran entrepreneur, and I hope he just continues to crush it. Because in the space of entertainment or even in the veteran world, like there's some haters out there, like there's some jealousy and backbiting that goes on, and I don't want to mention names, but it happens in every different community. And Jocko's another one of those guys. You are one of those guys. I'm one of those guys that subscribes to the philosophy of rising tides lift all ships. And so, it was a great experience. It was great to reconnect, and we learned stuff about each other. Like our career paths are so similar, almost identical. His in the Navy and the SEALs and being prior enlisted and being a Stinger guy and anti-air defense to conversion to an officer, and we both retired at the same rank, and we were, no pun intended, two ships passing in the night because he was in Ramadi in 06 with Task Force Bruiser, and then he ripped out, and then I rolled in, and we fell under the same flag and fought under the same commander. And so now next January, this next month, on the 14th, 15th, and 16th in El Paso, we're going to have the Ready First Ramadi reunion, and we have 1,400 people signed up.
Damn.
Yeah, so
That's
it went from a planning team of thinking we're going to a couple hundred guys, and Jocko, again, this is like his giving nature, is like he's inviting all these guys on the planning session, like to talk about the reunion, like flying out to San Diego and hopping in studio and just talking about it for the last several months on his show and leveraging his network to get sponsorships. And General McFarland's doing the same thing. So many amazing people have stepped up to contribute financially, provide some sort of support, bring some awareness to it, because reunions might not be your thing. For some it's too uncomfortable, but for a lot of guys, they're very important. And getting back to the unwritten theme of the show is like this network and the connection that we have. Who knows, man? You go to one of these reunions and you reconnect with somebody like, what are you doing now? Oh, like, I do this. I did not know you did that. I did not know you had a podcast. I did not know you were teaching people how to write their stories. I did not know you were an agent. I didn't know any of this.
Right.
So
a lot
of goodness came out of that trip. And I got to hang out with the illustrious Mike Sager, who we mentioned earlier on in the show, who you've got to have as a guest. He's definitely one you should go catch in his natural habitat at his house.
For sure. Yeah. Not only is his habitat wonderful, not only is he a wonderful host, but he's a great guest too. So he'll be great. Yeah. And just to amplify what you said. Go ahead.
No, again, you go back to, people who show up and do that. As I'm doing that show and I'm at Mike's, Pete remembers I'm in California. I don't know. He puts a calendar reminder or something, or he's got a memory like an elephant. He's just like, hey, aren't you in California? Where are you at? I'm like, I'm at Mike's. He goes, I'll drive down. And that night, Pete shows up at the doorstep, and we're drinking on the patio and catching up. Like that.
Yeah. And it was wonderful. The sunset was perfect, and I'm a firm, especially since my brother Eric passed away. When you think of someone, you reach out and you let them know, hey, I'm thinking of you. I don't need to do anything else. Just like if, I'm thinking about you. And it often turns into a phone call, but just, and it's not a wellness check. It's just, hey, I appreciate you, thinking about you. And then I don't want to be old and have regrets about missing out on simple things. And so I want there to be so many sunset cocktail sessions with people that I love that we can't remember which great time we were talking about when we talk about that one time that we had that great time. And I love talking about nightcaps. I want to have a nightcap within an evening. You and I and Danielle and John Leon Guerrero, who I started this show with, part of that philosophy was played out when we were in New Orleans, and I'm like, we're absolutely not going to bed yet. We don't got to get crazy in New Orleans. We got a lot of work to do and everything else, but we are going to go out and get.
We are going to have beignets in Louisiana. Like that's happening.
Yeah,
Got off our asses, dog ass tired, and we went and had beignets and great coffee in New Orleans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. and and when you see those pictures, we are funky, we are dirty, we are
Oh my
tired.
God.
We probably look great on the camera because it's not that bad. But I know how tired we were.
I will
I
never
must be admit.
forget that night. I'm glad I don't think about it enough, but I'll never forget that night where you're like, we have to go get beignets. And I'm like, what the fuck's a beignet? Like, I wasn't, up on
Yeah.
my New Orleans culinary culture. So we go get these little pastries with powdered sugar, and you order them at this window, and then you go to this thing. And the lady at the window, she sees the shirt I'm wearing. She's like, what is that? I go, oh, it's a veteran nonprofit. And someone chimes in, it's like, yeah, he's riding his motorcycle across the country in the heat of the summer to raise money for, veterans to prevent veteran suicide. And she paused before giving me my change. And she looked at me dead in the eye. And she says to me, you're just an angel to do that. And I was like,
Yeah.
it was like a spear through the heart, man. I was like, making an impact, is like in some total stranger's life, is like to share what we were doing. And she was just like, she got it, she's, it was, I forgot about that until you mentioned that, our nightcap sessions, but
Yeah.
they're varied. And,
And it was just a quick one. And by the way, we were at the world famous Cafe Du Monde. And again, we had the chance to go late hours because no late hours in New Orleans invented staying up overnight. But yeah, and we weren't that far away. Was it easier to stay in bed? Fuck yes.
Mm-hmm.
We were tired. But those memories that you get out of this, they're just incredible. And yeah, you are an angel, right? And you got a chance for that lady to say you're an angel.
Not many people will use that word to describe me, but it's a compliment
Yeah,
nonetheless.
Look at what you were doing, though. It was crazy. Yeah, and then I got Dan chiming in here, and we both had our friend Phil Green, who's passed away because of ALS. But one of my goals with Phil was to get him out for as many adventures as he could manage, and he definitely didn't mind that at all. Even to the point where I was his arms and legs, everybody, and I had to constantly do things and be ready to react in an emergency. And he and I would have these wonderful conversations. One of the things among many that Phil said that were really powerful. Phil showed up already a great person. Then he had ALS and became an even greater person. He said, I have a wonderful life, Pete. In spite of all this stuff, he's in a wheelchair. He's got to have a special van to drive around. He has to have special people feed him and put his contacts in. There's nothing more delicate than putting a contact lens in the eye of another human, especially if that human is 6'3", 205 pounds, while he has ALS.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what I want to do, Phil? I want to kill you. And I said this at his funeral. Like, I'm going to try to kill you with laughter and amazing times. And so we went to Dan's house, and I do these ridiculous videos for my friends where I play this coach, and he gives terrible advice and everything else. And Phil doesn't know anything about this. This is like a private text thread thing that we all have these things. And so he plays a coach. And so he's a visiting coach. He's in his wheelchair. He can barely, that's how he talks, right? And he plays the character of the coach was something like Coach Fuzzy Balls or something like that. And I shot a bunch of whipped cream on my face like he had an orgasm and hit me in the face. And Phil nearly died. He was like, he was laughing so hard. And I'm like, yes, die. Come on. And Dan was there for all of it. And oh my God. And just that experience, because Phil lived right by you. And so even when he was still able to walk around to do things, we got together a lot because those moments, we knew they were fleeting. We knew they were special. And we took a lot of time to do something. And Phil gives back just with his person, how he is.
Yeah,
how he saw things.
Last time I saw him was at the Dodgers game where you called me and said, Scott, you need to come to this thing. Phil's throwing out the pitch for the game here at Dodger Stadium, and again, there's one of those things. Like I was in Big Bear, California at the time. I was like, oh, I can drive to LA, and I was like, this is going to be but I was like, it's Phil. So I drove, and we took pictures, and me and you had Dodger dogs, and just to see Phil do that, and Steve Garvey was there, I think, and a bunch of other folks. But to honor Phil and like recognize what he was championing the ALS cause, being out there on that field. Like he didn't even have to be there. Like he couldn't give two shits about throwing out that ball, I'm sure, because he was a basketball guy. But yeah, amazing human being.
Yeah, amazing human being, and gosh, it's fun to think about Phil. But another thing that happened at this game, and this is just a funny aside. So the Dodgers were playing the Yankees, so it is ALS Day. You get the two premier franchises playing in LA, and the Yankees, of course, they kind of own the tall tent pole on the ALS front. And so Phil is on the field and he gets special access. And so he gets pulled back with Garrett Cole, who's a Cy Young caliber pitcher in that season, and Aaron Judge. And they're back in the runway to go off to the clubhouse. And one of his other buddies is there and he's taking a picture. Aaron Judge says to Phil on this day, "I'm going to hit you 2 home runs." And that was awesome. Aaron Judge did not hit 2 home runs that day. Mookie Betts hit 2 home runs that day. The very next day, Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig collected Aaron Judge's toe and said, "You need to sit your ass down. When you say you're delivering 2 home runs on ALS Day, you deliver them." And so Aaron Judge ran into a fence and sprained the shit out of his toe and missed the next 60 days because he didn't deliver those home runs.
Oh, my God.
How funny of a story is that? Now, look, Aaron, like there were no ghosts in this story, everybody. But you think about how interesting that timing is. And so I blame Phil for the Yankees' collapse of that season. They didn't make the playoffs.
Damn you, Green.
Come on, Green. Yeah. And now, by the way, everybody, Phil's son is arguably the best college punter in the nation. Hunter the punter, plays for San Diego State. And he rockets 60-yard punts like it's his job, and just is and no surprise, great athlete, super big and handsome, and also has been on the show. What do we want to wrap up with? I got Omar here in the green room waiting to come in. Hey, Omar, I see you. We'll get him in a second here. But what do you want to wrap up with, Scott? We're going to run out of time, and it's not nearly enough.
Yeah, just gratitude for so many years of friendship. That's, I think most people don't expect 2 best friends to just be hanging out on the podcast, just catching up on old times. But that's their problem, not ours. So, but I don't know. I mean, if there's, a lesson to be learned of this is, you and I, you are especially good at making those phone calls, and cultivating our relationship over the years. And I think, I don't know if it's a baked in sense of friendship guilt or something. It's like, man, I haven't talked to Pete in a while. I'm like, but you have to do it. You don't just like, well, then I just won't talk to him for another month or another couple of weeks. Like, no, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and I'm actually going to call and just check in. And just today I got a text from Jason Piccolo too, just like that. Like, hey, Scott. Right. Yeah. How are you doing?
Overdue.
So I'm going to find time to call Jason today, who's also been on the show, who's also an author and a veteran. And I'm just gonna be like, what's up? You want to catch up? And, I think, again, you just got to be grateful for what you have. It's not about, the money necessarily. It's about maintaining those relationships and making time for that. So,
yeah. Yeah, I popped Omar into the screen, also a veteran, and
hey, Omar,
this is going to be a live interview. Omar, this is my buddy Scott Huesing. He is a wonderful human, a handsome devil, if I say so myself. Looks a little bit like Chuck Norris, but tougher. And he is a rancher out in Weatherford, Texas, and he and I have done a lot of crazy adventures together. And the veteran thing is just a commonality, but we're all great people. And I'm going to be getting to know Omar here in a few minutes when he does the show. But Omar, meet Scott. Scott, meet Omar.
Scott, great to meet you, Pete. Great to see you as well.
Yeah. It's a fun thing we get to do. Scott and I are going to wrap this up here. Omar, hang with me in a second, and we'll chat. But Scott, thank you for coming on. You're right. I was thinking about Scott Piccolo, who's introduced us to a bunch of people. He also is a massive connector. Yeah, and there are so many opportunities. And oftentimes when I call you, it's because I have some kind of news to give you. And I've not been the best at just calling to catch up because we always have new things in our lives. But then again, we work on amazing things. I get to do the dopest, and you know this, the dopest things ever. I'm like, I can't believe I get to do this right now. You know, it's just there's too many things, and I know you live in the same thing. So that's what I have to say to wrap us up. Why don't you close us up?
I just want to, again, thanks for the friendship, man. And this show is a phenomenal platform. How many episodes are you at right now, Pete?
I quit counting at 2000.
Yeah,
that says enough.
It's mind blowing to think how many people have been on this show and the network, and we're continually pushing people to come on the show and to help support it. And there's people in our stable of friends and networks too that, like, they still haven't been on the show. So there's probably going to be another 2000 episodes just of amazing, interesting people that we've haven't had time or found enough time to carve out to have them on the show. Gardner Cole,
or just sitting in front of us and we're like bonk on the head. Why didn't we do this 10 years ago?
I know. Yeah. So just keep up the fire, man. And I'm always here for you. Anything you need, brother. I appreciate you and love you.
Yeah, love you too. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I got to get my truck and drive out to see you because I got people to see along the way. And I got to find that time. I can't be so busy that I can't do the thing that I love doing the most. Everybody, I'll have a show in a few minutes here, as you can see, because Omar's ready to rock. But this was Scott Huesing. I will see you all in a few minutes. Scott, hang in there. I'm going to turn this thing off. And Omar, hang in there. We'll be chatting in a second. I'll see you all in a few.